everyone. Welcome everyone back. So our next speaker doesn't really need an introduction as he's such a personality up there. I would like to welcome to the around stage the one and only Jama Jurabaev. Welcome, Jama. Oh, you're in mute.
I know. That's I always do that. What an introduction. No pressure on me, right? Well, thank you very much for having me here. Yeah, I was listening a little bit, Patrick. We met each other actually just right before the pandemic. Really great guy. And we've been in touch for a while actually on Instagram before as well. Cool. So what is the deal here? Yeah, I'm presenting, but no, actually, yeah. Well, obviously we talked with you, Daniel, and like I've been always playing with different things and doing all sorts of stuff. So today I would love just to share one of the projects I'm doing and just to share my general way I think about like workflows and all that stuff. Nothing is super polished. Everything I do these days is quite rough, just work in progress. But actually, it's great to be able to share those because that's something we kind of, it's almost like a backstage, that people rarely often see. So it would be nice to share some of that. But obviously, when it comes to especially 3D workflow, I'm always trying to be very conscious about being flexible, because tools are just tools. If a tool is not working for something or it could be improved, I will be happily looking for alternative for that. So again, as much as I love talking heads, I would love just to show you, maybe yeah. I can just share my screen and we can dive into it.
I'll leave it to you, Jama. I'll just kind of like turn my mic and video off.
Oh no, don't leave me alone.
I'll come back. I'll come back at the end for the Q&A.
Okay, got you. All right. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen here and let's see if we can do that. So hopefully you guys are seeing my screen. I have no idea. Are you guys seeing my screen? Maybe someone. Where's the chat here?
Yeah, it looks good, Jama.
You're seeing my screen, right? So this is a free program called Blender. You should go and get it. It's pretty cool. But anyway, so what I wanted to start from it, I know this is a very simple thing, but I actually wanted to sort of express my philosophy in terms of how I approach 3D, because unlike like painting and drawing, 3D could get very technical, right? Like even if you compare like two interfaces, like you've got Photoshop, like, yeah, there's a lot of menus and stuff like that, but 3D is way deeper, there are a lot of tabs, a lot of things and stuff like that. So my philosophy is always like trying to find the best tool for what I'm doing at the moment. And being a concept artist and being involved in so many different like types of movies, I find myself often in a situation where I have to think about like what actually is the best way to do this, right? There's no like single workflow, like the best workflow or the best application as well. There's like, I would say every application out there is pretty cool, because a bunch of really smart people came together and created a program, right? Some of them became huge and obviously big companies behind them, but I still think like every program has its own thing that it does very well. And for me, it pretty much what the application that I'm using for certain things is always driven by a need. Like what exactly do I need to do? For example, if you look at the simple, like I would say like my ultimate workstation is looking like this right now. So this is like no brand monitor. And then I have my keyboard and then I have 3 input devices basically. So one of them is obviously a mouse, right? This is a very ugly representation of a mouse. Then I have a tablet here, right? And then I have a VR headset, right? Somewhere over here. So this is my VR headset. Yeah, so something like this, right? Obviously, how I make a decision which one to use, there's actually another device here, which you don't see, but it's actually over here, right? So this device, this device has some ears like this. And inside this guy, there is another device. Oh my God, I'm terrible. It has 2 split parts, isn't it? Like the brain has, maybe mine is just one single part and a very small one, unlike yours. Anyway, so actually I think this is the most important device because this device makes decisions which one I want to use. Because again, a lot of times when my clients talk to me, they don't talk to my computer or my Oculus or my tablet, they talk to me, right? Like They say like, hey, we want this space vehicle, right? Or we want this really interesting creature, or we want this fairy tale kind of beautiful character, right? So again, all that stuff comes to me, and this guy over here, obviously this guy is being synced with my hands, right? So I'm using my hand, and then I'm using one of those devices. And again, it is important for me to kind of show this in a very simplistic way, because a lot of times, like, you get trapped, you started doing one thing and you get so used to it, and you just becoming so, like, I would say stiff, in terms of how you can like use different way of doing things. And that's why, like, I think, like, I have a very good habit. Before I even touch any of my devices, I kind of think about it, like, what would be the best way to do this? And then I go and I do, like, try different approaches. Again, I would say all of these devices are great. Obviously, mouse proved it by like dozens of years of using it. And then obviously the tablet is fantastic as well. And then obviously VR, in whatever headset you have, is a great input device. And all of them, they do certain things very, like, better than the others. And sometimes they cross each other, but a lot of times, like, it's almost like a combination of those. And again, to repeat it, the combination comes from here. You just think about how you do certain things, and then you use tools that will do that job the best, right? For example, if I give you a very quick example here, let's say if I'm using a mouse, right? Like, I just dropped my pen, I'm just using a mouse, right? Mouse is fantastic, because you can do, like, very quick stuff very quickly, just extruding stuff, like, controlling things. Nothing does better than mouse, this stuff of jobs. And even if it's a very complex sort of, let's say, 3D model or whatever, like, mouse always uh, does certain things very well. And I think the reason behind it is because you, like, the way you move your mouse, you don't need to move too much to make big sort of changes. That's what makes it super powerful. Like, you literally, like, almost like vibrate your hand, and you can do some stuff very quickly. So, like, doing a little extrusions in sets and all that stuff, it's super, super handy to do with mouse. However, let's say if you want to do something a little bit more elegant, this is where obviously tablet picks up, right? Like, you have a tablet which allows you basically to do things that mouse, you can do it with mouse, but it is a little bit less effective, right? Like, for example, if you want to do a shape like this, or like cut it out, yeah, you can do pretty much the same shape with mouse, but obviously it becomes less precise, because this feels more almost like a drawing, like, let's say if you want to design like some sort of a vehicle or something like this, right? You can just in one go, you can draw. And this is, by the way, a terrible vehicle, but that's how it looks as a sketch, right? Again, so I can do something like that with mouse, but it just will take way more time, and it's just not as flexible as a tablet. But I would say both of these input devices have one very important limitation, which is you can only connect dots or draw just on a flat screen, right? Like, you see, like, I made this shape, it looks cool, it looks 3D, but it is being drawn in one flat area. And that's a very big limitation. Anytime I want to do something in a different depth, I would say, I have to rotate my camera. And that's why in a regular mouse or Wacom approach, it takes you at least like a few more steps to achieve the depth, right? It is achievable, like I mentioned, you can just use mouse and create masterpieces. However, there are certain things that are much better done with the tablet, right? And obviously, because they're all doing stuff in 2D space, which means basically whatever you're drawing, like, you can create like a really complex shape, like a star or something. It's still located in this 2D space. So if you want to anything in a different plane, in a three-dimensional space, you have to rotate your camera, and this is where it falls short, right? But this is obviously where VR picks up, right? Like, in VR, you can actually connect those, like, let's say if you have 3 dots on different coordinates in the space, you can just connect them with one move. And this is like where VR actually shines. There's nothing else compared to that. Obviously, VR has its own limitations and stuff like that, but I think like we can talk about that in VR as well. So I'm gonna pick up my helmet so we can talk a little bit about that as well. So let me see if I can stay near my microphone while doing that. Okay, I have everything set up. I just need to confirm a couple of things. Okay, we're very close. I guess I'll have to pull this microphone towards me. Let's see. Okay, so why this is not working. Just a second. Just give me a few seconds. Sort it out. Oh, gravity sketch is updating. Okay. Luckily, that was fast. So. Okay, I think you guys should be able to see my VR space, right? So,
Yeah, we can see it.
yeah, let's just do this. And okay. So again, there's no point to explain how it works like from scratch. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with VR, but what I was saying that like, let's say if you have 3 dots, right? Like, let's say I have one here, one here, one here. As you see, they're located completely in different space coordinates. And then the beauty of being in VR, like you can connect them. It looks like a very simple thing, especially like, I think it will make more sense if I do something like this, right? So if I had to do this in such a shape and in VR, I can actually make it in one go, right? Like you can do this, you can do that, you can do that, you can do that, you can swap and do something like this, right? In normal 3D approach, I could do this, but it would take like way more steps, you know? And actually this simple principle opens you so many possibilities, because using that, you can actually start creating like really impressive things, especially like, for example, let's say if I activate my symmetry here, let's say I want to sketch something. And again, like you can do a lot of detailed stuff in VR as well, but I mainly use this as a sketch sort of ideation media, because this is where I can really not bother about technicality of things and purely think about like executing in my own ideas. And for example, let's say if I'm working on some sort of vehicle, right? Like let's say I can put like a cockpit here, can put some over here, maybe some wheels over here. And look how quickly I was able to kind of nail a general sort of idea, and then I could have like a couple of wheels. Again, this is a vehicle I'm working on right now. That's why I'm so familiar how it looks like. But even if I was doing this from scratch, it wouldn't be any different, you know, because it's so easy to sort of create this sort of ideas very quickly. And look, again, I was doing what I was doing in Blender with just tablet, but this time I was doing this in 3D space. And yes, it looks very rough, but it has all the elements that I need, you know, like for example, let's say, work it up a little bit more, let's say, and I'm going to show you this vehicle. I actually made it in 3D later on. This is just like a sketch phase to show you how you move, how you start with these designs, right? So let's see. maybe there's like another seat over here, and maybe there's a gun over here, right? And let's just rework this area. So yeah, this is a very quick rough sketch, but it has almost every element that I need, because from here, all I have to do is just refining things. I will just carry on and start like adding more and more stuff on top of it. Let's say, for example, and also what I love about VR is the fact that you can start thinking about like mechanics of how this works. Like, let's say I can see that this could be moving like this, on the bumpy surface. It would be moving around this pivot point, and then possibly I can go, okay, here I can have like a rotation pivot point, right? And maybe some sort of hydraulics that connects over here, so this wheel can move. Right now, I don't need anything fancy, because all I'm thinking about is just mechanics, how it will work, right? And then maybe like I can offset this tire a little bit. Maybe there's another pivot point over here, which I can just like, maybe there's another pivot point over here. Yeah, so I can rotate. Obviously, right now they are mirrored. That's why they're rotating in opposite directions. But I think I can unmirror them. Let me see. There's a way to do that. I forgot how to do it. So they can behave like proper wheels, right? And then, for example, I can start thinking about, maybe I could have some sort of a thing over here as well, which could be like almost like a speed brake or something like that. So we could move like this. I can put it over here. Then I can start thinking about, maybe I can have like headlights over here, right? Something like that. And also the beauty of VR is the scale. Like right now, I'm having this as a sketch, correct? But I can always blow it up and make it almost like as big as I am, which obviously I did this demo quite a few times. It doesn't make sense when you're watching on the screen, but when you are in VR, it actually makes a lot of sense. And for example, over here, I can start drawing these instruments, I don't know, some sort of monitors. And because it's real scale, I can know exactly that I can reach out to them. And from a design point of view, it's perfect, because you're not making things up. Like often what happens in 3D when you design, you come up with a cool shape, but then from a human perspective, a lot of things don't work. Like let's say this panel is too far away or stuff like that. Here in VR, it's all already kind of designed properly, because it represents the real world scale. Yeah. So this is what we have. Maybe I can start also thinking about having these moving, like this could be like, if I had this engine over here, right? This could be a place where you, like engineers or whatnot, they access the maintenance of this engine, right? So we have this like big panels which move up and down. Again, because I have a lot of experience using this approach, I'm not really worried about, oh, but this is like really, really rough and stuff. I know I can push it. Like what is important always is start from simple ideas towards more complex ones. And VR really allows me to nail sort of this basic idea very quickly. And then I can start dressing it up. Like even in VR, you have some tools that allow you to do that. Like for example, I can start actually creating this sort of thing, just like covering it up a little bit. But still, I only think about the purpose of the things that I'm making right now, instead of just like going straight into details. I'm mainly focusing on the main ideas, how the things interact with each other. Always thinking about this pivot points. Like let's say if I can mark it so it's a different color, like if this is supposed to be a moving mechanism, I'm already setting this like pivot points where like things will be rotating around, which will allow me later on to refine it in a way it all works and makes sense. For example, there would be one over here, maybe much more complex mechanism over here, which goes inside. There will be some hinging mechanism over here, maybe, which will allow me to rotate these guys. This guy almost looks like a bug, isn't it? Which is cool. And for example, for a different color, with a different color, I can mark up like static sort of frames where nothing is like, you know, there's always like a static frame and the rest is built on top of it. Static frame. So I think like in terms of as a sketch, this is pretty much enough. It's nothing award-winning, but I had this idea in my mind and I was able to block it out very quickly, isn't it? Imagine like when you have time, and good design takes time, you know, like I'm not rushing here. The reason why I'm using VR isn't the speed actually, which obviously as an outcome, it becomes much faster. But what I'm chasing here is actually being able to see how those things work with each other instead of just being fast, you know. And you can see I'm not like drawing or painting fast or like 3D modeling fast. It just allows me to see those mechanisms much faster. Anyway, what would be the next step for this one? Obviously, Gravity Sketch or any other VR tools you have, you can do very detailed stuff. Like there are some fantastic tools that allow you to make detailed things. And for example, let's say you can start blocking out like proper geometry and like going into sub-D modeling, like creasing edges and doing all that stuff. However, I think this is where personally myself, I probably would go back to regular 3D like Blender or 3D Code and start doing things there. Or I can use pre-made libraries. For example, specifically for this topic, I have a set of assets here. Let me just go to library here, over here, right? So let's say I can pick up one of those characters. Pick someone. So I have this characters, and like because the character here will be just for scale, it would be pointless for me just to create the character in VR. So I'll just grab this pre-made characters that we have here. I would say, see, probably this character will fit it really nicely. I'll break it up. Oops. Let's grab this. And I'll probably delete the rest of these characters. Then probably what I will do, I'll create a layer here. And then within this layer, I'll drop the character over here. And then the rest of my sketch, this will become like a preliminary sketch. So drop it here. I'll decrease the opacity and lock it. So it's almost like, let's say if you're doing a Photoshop drawing, you just like have a preliminary sketch. And now actually I can start assembling this. Look, just because I know the proportions now, I don't need to guess. So why didn't I do this from scratch, right? Like instead of doing a sketch, I could have easily brought those like pre-made kit bash parts. You can do that, but I think like having a sketch forces you to design, you know, not think about like all small bolts and rivets and hydraulics and all that stuff. Sketch meant to be there for the design phase. That's why I wasn't starting with this. I was starting with just general layout. But now, as I have it, I can start bringing like real elements, right? So this will be the first step, and then I have another one. which is basically much bigger, and it has all the like mech parts. So I can bring this in. So all of this stuff was obviously made externally. Like there's no point to make this in VR. And like I said, the reason why I showed you that schematic sort of drawing at the beginning, you always think what would be the best way to kind of improve and move forward. And if, like, for example, making this character or any of this like mech kit parts will take me a lot of time. You can do them in VR, but it just takes enormous amount of time. So that's why, like, I would, if I, for example, had to do something like this, I would do this in Blender and bring them back. But I already, to save our time, I already have this. So what I will do here, I'll start just grabbing like elements from here. Let's say I need some, probably some tires, right? Yeah, and we have some tires here. I'll just put this here. So, and then this tires, let's make those mirrored. And now I can just position, because I already have the sketch, all I got to do is just align them nicely, and then I can copy them over. Another copy. So look how slowly, like, I think you see where this is going, right? Like you can quickly, just following your sketch, you can just like, obviously I know that this is going to be some sort of like hydraulics and stuff like that. There's a lot of like hydraulics part I have here. I can. Okay, I accidentally bumped into my microphone. Yeah, so I'll start grabbing this stuff and positioning them where they need to be. Something like that. And then, for example, I've got this really nice frame here. Maybe I can take that one, and this could be like a frame where, like the main frame where around which the vehicle is built, right? We use this, just rotate it, place it over here. So again, I'm kit bashing here, but I'm following the sketch that I already had. So making that sketch was very crucial, because right now I don't, it's in a way like helps me not to guess, but being very precise and know exactly where I'm placing things. So for example, I can grab this one. Somewhere over here. I'll bring in another one I have. Obviously, over here, these are like very basic parts. Like it will probably take me some time to put them all together. But to save our time, for example, I can start bringing already pre-made elements. Like for example, I have this cockpit right over here, so I can just like go ahead, maybe and position somewhere here. There's a seat there. Is there any way to separate the seat? So. Anyway, we're going to be using another element, but I will bring in another one, which is, oops, this one. Okay, in this one I have like already pre-made parts, so I don't like all this stuff is assembled from those little parts. But in order to save our time, for example, I will go and pick up this gun, for example. So now I don't have to model that gun anymore. going to group that. This guy goes here. Pick up this element. Place it underneath over here. And you don't always like, that's the reason why I'm not doing this step in Blender. First, like I find VR is much more intuitive in terms of how you place your elements, you know, like you can be much more precise. And again, if I was doing this in Blender, I had to, like, let's say if I want to rotate this, but also rotate it like that, I had to do this in 2 takes, you know, first do it like that, then like this. In VR, I can do it freely just by positioning it over here. But also what is cool, like, let's say I can pick up this color and I can go and still draw certain elements. You don't always need to have this really nicely made prefab kit bash parts. Let's say if I want some cables, like doing this, right? I can do this in Gravity Sketch. You don't need it, and that's why like I preferred this kit bash method in VR like this, right? So I'll show you the final model, how this turned out. It actually looks good. But before we do that, I actually wanted to show you another approach, which actually the artist who created this Mac part kit, main super talented designer himself, he showed me this idea and I was like, wow, this makes so much sense. It's a bit of a different approach where you do the sketch, but before you do the sketch, you actually first, it's almost like filling the gaps game, right? You put the frame, let's say you want to make like a free-wheel car, right? And then, for example, you put the frame first like this. Obviously, let's just rotate it like that so the wheel is in front. Let's say let's actually use this gun, but now this gun is going to be over here, right? And this is like almost like a reverse engineering thing. So first you put the frame, and then you sort of fill the gaps, you know, like let's say you want to do the wheels and then move maybe this one, this over here. So now instead of doing sketch first and filling it out, you kind of reverse engineering it and trying to connect the dots, right? Let's say you do things, maybe you have stuff over here, and then maybe the wheel is actually. So now, like from a design point of view, like I think, how do I connect this wheel to the rest of the vehicle? You know, I can't just do this. So I think like the way it should work, there should be some sort of like this kind of system where the wheel goes in, right? It's also a very cool design sort of exercise as well, because it forces you to think, and this is where you're coming up with this really interesting ideas. It is also very powerful, I believe, because again, a lot of times when I see people just like trying to come up with things, they don't think about how the mechanism will function. And in the end, I actually will show you later on in Blender, when you just make up things, they don't work, you know, like again, for movies or games, it doesn't necessarily need to be 100% engineered and mechanically correct. However, if you can make it look like it's working, design looks much better instead of just having like random cool shapes here and there. Anyway, so those are like 2 quick approaches. And as you can see, like I can carry on and like refine this one and refine the other one because I have all the elements, and VR just is a perfect media that combines all those like good things that I love about mouse and a tablet, and obviously allows you to do a lot of things much more intuitively. However, this is where we're going to be jumping back to Blender. Obviously, there are certain like there will be a certain point where you will realize like it becomes very slow gradually, because again, it's just impossible to model everything in VR. You know, it is. I mean, I would say it is possible, but it's not worth doing at least for me, because I find it easier just to go back to traditional 3D and then refine this over there. Again, I'll go and show you how it actually looks like as a final thing. I will show you some pictures because I'm actually right now working on this guy. That's why like some of this stuff is quite rough. However, I would love to show you. Yeah, so basically this guy that we were looking at right now, it is looking like this, you see? So, and you can see like all the ideas that I was sort of sketching there in VR, they obviously you change certain things as you go. And this is why I go back to Blender and 3D. I'm just trying to figure out if everything makes sense, because a lot of times when you're drawing, you just not, I wouldn't say making up things, but it's so rough, it's not very refined, and you actually need to go back and refine this. Yeah, you can see like some other stuff over here. Like I went back and I was like really refining those elements to make sure that they fit each other and stuff. Yeah, but obviously this is personally for me that was a challenge because I've been always just, I wouldn't say always, but a lot of times you just design like a look of something, and I remember like when I was working with other designers and 3D modelers, they always complain because they start like putting things together and a lot of things don't make sense, they don't fit. Again, for a film, you can get away with things you don't need to, but if you want to build something, it needs to be like properly done. And I wanted to test myself in this one, and I actually wanted to 3D print this guy, and obviously because I mean, this is just an exterior, it looks pretty cool, but when you go inside, a lot of things wouldn't match because, again, just because I was focusing on the exterior. But the good news, because when I was doing that in VR, you saw me, I was thinking about all those pivot points and how everything would be hinged and the inner frame and all those things. Again, it wasn't that awful when I opened it inside and I was looking how can I improve it. It was all, the base was there. I just had to go and start like reworking certain elements. And for example, all that stuff I do in 3D code, and I can show you here. Yeah, you can see like what I'm doing here. I'm basically like deconstructing it and opening it up, just making sure that like all the elements fit each other. And it's on, because like in 3D print, I can send this model to a printer, but it will look awful because 3D print needs to have supports, and if I want everything to be built together after I print it out, I have to make it in parts. And that's the reason why like everything I do here needs to make at least fit each other. It doesn't need to work like 100%, but at least it needs to fit each other. And where's 3D code? I can show you. This is like a mess, guys, over here. So yeah, you can see like I had to actually like engineer like all these supports for like, normally you don't do this stuff, but I just find it so cool because again, I want to print this model quite big. And if it was just a shell, it will be very fragile, So I was building almost like building an inner frame. And you can see over here, like I'm just making sure that like when I will be assembling this, it will all sort of come and fit together nicely, like over here, you can see like I cut this frame in a way. Yeah, it sort of like fits each other. You can see like over here, I created this little gap. So then I will be able to assemble each other. And obviously like a lot of quite straightforward stuff. You can have like elements hanging just in the air, because when you print them out, they have to sit on something. But it was a very challenging and very rewarding exercise for me because I realized how you actually need to think about those things like properly, just so everything kind of connects with each other. But again, everything started from that very simple, obviously design of this vehicle was done by Min, and he did a brilliant job, but I'm pretty sure when he was designing it, he did it pretty much the way I showed you in VR, just first goes the sketch and then you refine it. And I was so inspired by his design. I was like, damn, I need to make this thing work, right? So, and you can see actually like the first iteration of this vehicle on my Artstation. It looks super detailed, and I'm trying to stay very true to this design. However, a lot of things I had to tweak, you know, in order to make them fit each other. And most of the time it was just fine tuning. But that's what you do as a designer. You know, a lot of times, like personally myself, I don't finesse anything to this level. However, this was like a personal challenge for me. I just wanted to make it like this finesse. A lot of times, you obviously there isn't a huge amount of very talented 3D artists who push it to the next level. They hats off. They figure out all this like weird, like rough stuff that we do as a designers. But again, so this is sort of the workflow, and I would say again, just I mentioned, every time I do something, my mind always thinks like, what would be the best way to do this, right? Like for example, even with sculpting, when it comes to sculpting, you know, you have ZBrush, you have 3D Code. Both of them are great, but for example, 3D Code does certain things that ZBrush cannot do, right? Because 3D Code is a voxel-based program. It can, like, you can cut holes, you can do like really interesting things. But obviously, on the other side, ZBrush does work with high poly very well. So for example, if this model approaches 40 million polygons, I would say around 100 million polygons, it will start being a little bit slow. So again, 3D workflow, it's there's no like universal 3D workflow. There's always some apps, some programs that do certain things better, you know, but the good news, you have another instrument inside this head that kind of makes all the decisions. And also what I love about like 3D workflow, I would say the same goes to 2D. It's just so fun, you know, there's so much you can learn and explore. And like with this one, it was a huge challenge. And I actually, it isn't that Mac that I wanted to show you, but I actually already pre-cut and prepared another one, which you can see over here. So this guy, so yeah, it also took a lot of time to figure out. It was a little bit easier though. The other guy had wheels and all those things, but I was happy to do this, and I can show you. I actually have printed out parts. So here we go. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I have all these like little, so I can show it straight to the camera. Yeah, it's very rewarding. So a few days ago, these guys were in my computer. I would say a month ago, 2 months ago, they were in Min's head. But then we were able to extract them to a computer, and now obviously I'm planning to assemble it, put it together. So it's really cool to see how like your ideas come together and you can actually make them in real life. So, and this Mac is Pro, I kind of like really quickly put it together. There's a photo of it. I would say it's like 20 centimeters or so. But with the car, I really want to go big, maybe like 40 centimeters. It's gonna be awesome. It will take my soul, but I'm so excited to actually finish it. And I'm almost close to like finishing the modeling part of it. So hopefully I'll send it to printing tomorrow. So yeah, so I guess Daniela, that was my current workflow. So there wasn't any magic or secret, but it was full of struggles. But that's how I do things.
Thanks, Jama. Well, I mean, I think that's part of the interesting part about hearing your like behind the scenes talk, right?
Yeah.
Which is like there are no big secrets and just kind of like the things that you face every day for getting your ideas out.
Absolutely. I mean, 3D printing is another level of complexity. I used to have FDM printer, which was straightforward, pretty straightforward, but I got the resin printer. Oh my God. I tried to print it at home. Like in a day, I realized, no, there's no way you're doing this inside the house, you know? And I had like this little shed outside in our garden, which was basically for rubbish that wouldn't fit the bins. So I had to like remove all that stuff and put the printer there. But at least now I feel safe, you know, otherwise it was smelling so, it's not a bad smell. It's like just, you can feel it's a very chemical smell, which you obviously don't want to be around for long. Yeah. So 3D printing, again, we talk a lot about 3D and all that stuff, but actually making things in real life is like another layer of complexity. But it's fun, you know, and no one is actually forcing me. It's just what I love about art and design. When they combine together, you can actually have a lot of things that you need to figure out. It's almost like engineering them, you know. That's why I absolutely love what I do. every day brings another challenge. And every day I'm telling myself, why am I doing it to myself? It's too complex, right? But then it's just rewarding. Like when I printed out that little thing, I was like happy like a child, because I was like, damn, this was inside the computer, like let's say a week ago, and like 2 months ago it was inside Min's head, even, right? So all starts over here, and then you just select, like you choose the tools that you would love to use, and some of them work better than the others. But it all most of the time it's just a combination of those.
That's like, I think that's the most important part. You saying that, you know, it like what really matters is what's here, and it all starts here, right? And then
Yes.
what you end up using. I mean, some tools will be good for something, some tools won't be good for like some other things, and it really like it's really you using the tool and figuring it out, as opposed to kind of like saying, okay, my process is this and I always need to follow this.
Yeah. Well, you say though, but I know artists who just, it's almost like having a food, you know, you go to Japanese restaurant and they give you chopsticks, but you don't use chopsticks to eat soup, right? Like you drink soup or you use a spoon. It's pretty straightforward, but sometimes for some reason when it comes to tools, even there is a soup on your table, some people still use chopsticks to do that, which I don't, frankly, don't understand fully. But you know, people do whatever they want, you know. So I would never like try to convince anyone to do what I do. I would always show how I do it, and if people are like keen to sort of like replicate that process, I'm happy. If not, we'll just carry on. But I think that what is most important is like what I mentioned at the beginning. You know, there's so many like really smart people trying to come up with these new tools, and it's damn difficult, you know, to come up with any sort of product. And that's why I'm always very happy to help out companies to improve and like to push forward whatever the tools they're trying to make. Because if it wasn't you or some other guys or some other teams, we wouldn't have any of like the programs that we are using. You know, there's a lot of effort going into it. So I'm always very respectful towards it.
Yeah, and I'm a witness of that, and how you get super engaged with people building the tools, and like you definitely give a lot of feedback and like keep requesting the things that you want to see in the tools.
I never give up. You know me. I always keep requesting stuff.
I know. Cool. All right. So I think we can jump into like a quick series of questions.
Yes.
There's a lot of like comments on like, you know, your amazing workflow, and like people definitely getting ideas on how you're showing things. There, one question here. I do it all in VR plus Octane. Do you still use Octane, or has Blender replaced it?
I use Octane quite a lot actually. I don't use standalone anymore because they have Octane plugin, and they have this fantastic artist Lino Grandi who like personally would help me every time with Octane Blender add-on. He actually helped me a lot, because sometimes like again with renders, same situation, you know, like you like for example, I still believe the best toon shader you have is in Keyshot, because it's so simple and like you can just drop your model, boom, 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 it's beautiful. You can sort of mimic that in Blender, and it's not a question of inferior or superior, you know, it's a question of what works for you. Like if Keyshot can render toon shader in 2 minutes and it's a flawless toon shader, I'll go for it. And I have programs. Well, again, the problem is that Keyshot costs money and Blender is free. So this is where some people could struggle. However, as a professional, I have to have some budget to buy programs and stuff. And same with Octane, for example, there are certain things that Octane does brilliantly, you know, like tessellated displacement is just fantastic, you know, like Blender really struggles if you do it with real geometry and displacement. In Octane, it's all like this virtual displacement, which is super fast. So I don't use the standalone that much. I don't know, maybe because I started using Blender a lot, and because it's integrated within the Blender, inside Blender. So yeah, but it's a great combination. Again, same situation with renders or textures or drawing apps or any sort of apps. There are certain things they do better than the others, and it's not a question about one is superior than the other one. It's just about what fits your needs.
Definitely. There's Greasy Bear that has been asking a lot of questions, and he raised his hand. So I think he wants to actually speak and say his question like speaking. So Jaren, would you be able to turn Greasy Bear's mic on so that
Jama.
He's good to go.
Hey,
Hey, what's up,
Henry.
buddy? Nice speaking to you.
Good to hear you, man. We actually know each other. So.
oh,
Yeah, you're a good man. I love your work, dude. It's great to see this live performance in Gravity Sketch. This is very impressive. I want to say that.
Thank you.
I love the way that you're importing the mech squad into Gravity Sketch and using it that way as well. That's phenomenal right there.
Mhm.
That being said, I got a question for you. You did a mech warrior or a mech robot on a YouTube video a while back using Gravity Sketch. My question is, you did it in a time lapse. How long did that actually take you to make from beginning?
Oh, was it like the yellowish one I did? The
It was pretty square looking.
Yeah.
And I was just interested.
I don't think it took a long time, actually. You saw me like I did that sketch very quickly. Actually, what takes a lot of time is refining certain elements. And back in the days, like I did everything completely in Gravity Sketch, right? So that could potentially make it a bit longer. However, like with today's approach, I showed you that you can use prefabs, like just sort of joints and stuff like that, just to place them very quickly.
Yeah,
However, I would say one thing, I don't know, maybe it's just an excuse for myself, but like I've been working on all this like really big titles, and every time I go, why am I so slow? And then I started like telling myself this excuse, which kind of sounds cool. Maybe it's not true. I just keep saying myself, good stuff takes time, like, and it's actually partially, like, I wouldn't say partially, it's true, like if you want something that actually is very well designed, it takes a lot of time. What takes less time is this: you have this idea in your mind, and I always love to kind of spend the less amount of time possible, just like to sort of dropping that idea on a canvas, but then refining that idea could take months. Like, for example, let's say I worked on a lot of characters in movies. Like, you can nail a look of a character like in 2 days, but developing the whole thing sometimes takes up to 2 years. Again, it's definitely faster to do certain things in Gravity Sketch or in VR in general. However,
I saw what you just demonstrated within the time that you had, and it's amazing what you just did. So it does give me a time frame in real time, because you basically did that in real time.
Yeah. But again, in general, I wouldn't chase time too much. It is important to do certain things as fast as possible, but there's like a lot of time you just need to think and rethink and refine and redesign and reshape. However, what is important from a client point of view, if you can do that step by step, right? So it's not like, hey guys, I need a year to design something, and then you just walk away and come back in a year. It doesn't work that way. There's always like time frames, let's say 2 days for initial sketch, like a week for modeling phase, and then like 3 months for refining. It always goes step by step. That would say it's the only thing related to time. Other than that, like I don't know, like working on the projects I worked on, they never try to kind of squeeze you and try to force you to make it as fast as possible, because a lot of things, they just don't happen that quickly. You have to think and design, and that process takes some time. Cool.
Daniela, you're muted. Sorry.
sorry about that. So we have another volunteer to speak, Mr. Maslow. Go for it. Well, yeah, there we go.
Just trying to unmute myself here.
Yeah, that's the challenge, isn't it?
You're good. You can go.
Hey, Jama, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you very much. Yourself? I think we lost him again.
Very good. A patron of yours for a few years now, so I have a huge backlog of your stuff to work on. But the long-term vision, and I have a question about that. with you having worked on Ready Player One, how much of that do you see becoming a reality where people build assets back to the metaverse, which is all these companies looking to the future?
Well, you were breaking up, but I would imagine you were asking about how fast or is it possible for Ready Player One to become a reality, right? Having this virtual world and people interacting with each other and having avatars and all that stuff. I don't know. It is possible. I mean, Facebook is doing that. They're trying to make it. I would say for now, for example, right now I don't use VR that frequently, and the only reason I don't do that, I'm waiting for a gear to catch up, because like, let's say headset came out 2-3 years, but it's still not the best. I see the progress, so I'm just waiting when we get like a perfect or much better, because I'm getting older and I don't see myself like sitting on with a helmet 8 hours a day working on something, but logic says that it's going to happen, like one day we will have this really light devices. It's either going to be like AR glasses or something like that. But by then, I think like what will happen with companies like Facebook and others, they will keep pushing this virtual content. So eventually, when this whole thing is ready, like the technology is there, there's no reason why it shouldn't be a real thing, because like even look at, let's say, for example, look at how phones, like cell phones, have like progressed over the years. They started being very clunky, very slow, but now obviously they're everywhere. Everyone is using it. And also look at the sort of attention span of how much you're using your phone, like opposing to 10 years earlier, right? Like let's say 20 years ago, we were like spending maybe 1% of our time in looking at your phone, right? I think now research says that we are like spending almost like 50% of our free time like glimpsing at stuff. It's either phone or TV or something. And I would imagine when you will have something that is not like so clunky and so easily put on your face or in front of your face or projected in your eye or something like that, I do believe that thing will explode, which is good news for artists, because that content needs to be created. Someone needs to create all that stuff, that it wouldn't be born out of nowhere, right? So for artists, it's good news. And in terms of, is it going to be like utopian or bad thing? I don't think so, because there's a lot of good implementations of virtual world, starting from education to exploration. Let's say like kids, they go to school now, you can like, they put the glasses on and they see the universe in front of them, not just in pictures or videos. They can actually be there traveling on this virtual spaceship or something like that. That would be, I would love to do that, but I think I will be too old by then to fully kind of appreciate it. But I do believe it's going to be interesting again, because everything, like every sign I see right now points towards that, when it's going to happen, I don't know, but it's definitely moving there.
Cool. We have time for one last question. And so this is from the chat from Brian. In kit bashing, how important is it for the mechanical parts to make sense or appear to? I have a mechanical engineering background, so I feel like I get too caught up in the real world applications and get frustrated.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you asked this, Brian. I actually come from aerospace engineering, so I'm also very strict towards like flying vehicles. That's why when I watch like spaceships flying, I was like, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't work like that. However, again, in a way, like when you're designing anything, you study real world objects, right? Let's say if you want to make a vehicle that has wheels and meant to drive, you can just come up with random shapes and say like, hey, this is working, right? People don't buy it. They can't explain why this is not working, like me and yourself. However, they consciously know that, oh, this is bullshit, right? Like, I don't believe it. So, but again, it doesn't necessarily need to be 100% working, right? Like if you've seen latest Dune, and you look at the beautiful vehicles they did, they're like, you probably would say, oh, well, that's not how like the blades meant to move, you know, in order to get airborne or something like that. But again, like 90% of the audience, they were like, they bought it because it kind of looks like it could work. So yeah, but I would say for an artist, it's a little bit of a trap when you're trying to finesse everything and make sure it works. However, I would say you can use it as your strong side, you know, because a lot of artists that do like this kind of mechanical stuff, they don't have the knowledge that you have as a mechanical engineer. So if you can just step away slightly from being like 100% real, I would say, like, you know, even in Star Wars, there's a rule, like Star Wars, they say Star Wars is like 80% real world and 20% imaginary world. So same probably would go for vehicles. If you can make like 90% real vehicle and 10% of that twist on top, it will look very believable and people will like see, oh, that could work. And if you do something on opposite, like let's say it's 10% real and 90% imaginary, then this is where it all falls apart. It just doesn't look nice and doesn't work at all.
Cool. All right. Well, we're getting to the end. Jama, thank you so much for your time.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you very much. It wasn't anything special, but it was my own internal struggle dealing with this bloody vehicle and how it looks from inside. So sometimes you got to do this. But yeah, anytime, Daniel. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And so the next talk is starting actually straight away. So don't leave. Stay tuned. Thanks, Jama.
Thank you.
Bye.